My hands shook as I stared at the empty safe. The weight of what had happened slowly started to settle in. I'm Lisa Bennett, 36 years old, divorced, and a mother doing her best to build a future for my daughter Sophia. Every spare dollar I managed to put aside went into that safe, her college fund. Hosting the family get-together at my small suburban home had felt like a good idea. A way to reconnect, to make memories, and maybe, just maybe, prove to everyone, including myself, that I was holding it together, even after the divorce 3 years ago. But now, standing in my bedroom with the safe, cracked open and $5,000, gone without a trace. I didn't feel together at all. I felt violated. My thoughts instantly went to my sister's husband, Mark. Something about him had always put me on edge. The way his gaze lingered on my belongings, the offhanded questions he asked about my finances, always paired with that smug little smile. The discovery came just after everyone had left, except Emily and Mark. I confronted him right there in my living room. "Are you actually accusing me of stealing from you?" he asked, feigning offense before letting out a laugh. "Maybe you misplaced it. Or spent it and forgot. Money's never really been your strength, has it? Isn't that what led John to walk out?" That laugh, so full of mockery and certainty, set my blood on fire. He truly believed he'd gotten away with it. What he didn't know was that his arrogant confidence was about to shatter, and the expression on his face when the truth came out later, I'll never forget it. Growing up, Emily and I were inseparable, only 18 months apart. More like twins than sisters. We shared everything: clothes, secrets, hopes. Even as adults, we talked nearly every day. But things changed the moment she met Mark Davis at her office Christmas party 3 years ago. I tried to be supportive at first. After all, she looked happy, and following the wreckage of my own marriage, I truly wanted that for her. But something shifted between us. Mark's presence changed the dynamic. Everyone else saw him as polished, successful, and charming, the ideal partner for my smart, beautiful sister. But I saw the cracks when no one else was watching. I saw a very different side of Mark. He had a way of belittling restaurant staff whenever his order wasn't exactly to his liking. His critiques of Emily's appearance were always disguised as well-meaning advice, but they stung just the same. And when it came to me, he wore his condescension like cologne, subtle but impossible to ignore. "Any luck on the job front, Lisa?" he'd ask during family gatherings, fully aware that I was still trying to piece my career back together after stepping away from marketing to raise Sophia during my marriage to John. The divorce left me in a precarious financial position. John had been the main earner, and while child support offered some relief, I had to juggle 2 jobs to provide stability for Sophia. The $5,000 I'd managed to put away was the result of half a year's worth of late-night freelance, design gigs, and extra shifts at the neighborhood cafe. That money was set aside for Sophia's college preparations, application fees, campus visits, and the essentials she'd need for her freshman year. Mark was well aware of this. I had mentioned it at dinner the previous month, proud of the progress I'd made. I remember his expression, part disbelief, part something else I couldn't quite place at the time. In hindsight, it was probably calculation. Mark had a history of making snide remarks about my finances. He'd offer help with birthday gifts for Sophia in front of our parents or make subtle digs about my practical wardrobe, implying it was code for cheap. Sometimes, he'd suggest investment strategies that clearly required funds I didn't have, always delivered with that same smug grin, as if my financial hardship was a moral failure, rather than the consequence of rebuilding my life after 15 years of marriage. But that $5,000 wasn't just money. It was proof that I could still stand on my own, that I could keep my promise to give Sophia a good start in life. And now it was gone, probably taken by someone who already had more than enough, but still chose to rob me of what little I had managed to save. I'd been planning the family reunion for weeks, determined to host something meaningful, even with a limited budget. This would be my first time hosting in my new home, a simple 3-bedroom house I'd proudly purchased after saving up for a down payment. I wanted my parents to see that I was doing okay, that the divorce hadn't broken me. The menu was curated with precision: Homemade appetizers that looked fancy but weren't. A potluck-style dinner, where everyone brought something they were good at making. I baked all the desserts myself over 3 exhausting nights after work. I scrubbed every inch of the house, picked up discounted flowers from the farmer's market, and even painted the guest bathroom to cover up the old peeling wallpaper. The night before the event, I checked on the cash in my safe. I ran my fingers over the bills. I'd saved over months, each one a symbol of sacrifice and persistence. The safe was nothing more than a fireproof lockbox, tucked behind shoeboxes and winter clothes in my closet. I hadn't hidden it from family out of distrust, but from the embarrassment of keeping that much cash at home. After John's legal tactics froze my bank accounts during the divorce, leaving me unable to buy groceries for days, I'd sworn to always have emergency cash within reach. The reunion itself was better than I had hoped. My mom took command of the kitchen, as always, and my dad watched baseball with Sophia. My brother James showed up with his wife and their twins. Cousins, uncles, and aunts slowly filled the rooms, laughter and conversation bouncing off the walls. Mark and Emily arrived fashionably late. Mark made some offhand comment about how charming the neighborhood was, like it was a shock I hadn't ended up somewhere worse. In all, we had about 25 people in the house. Throughout the day, I noticed Mark slipping away from the group several times. At first, I didn't think much of it. People step out for phone calls or to use the restroom. But around 4 p.m., as I walked down the hall to grab more hand towels, I saw him coming from the direction of my bedroom. "Just looking for the bathroom," he said with that smooth tone. Strange, considering the guest bathroom was far closer to the main living area. I pointed him in the right direction, a flicker of unease rising in my chest. But then my nephew spilled punch. My aunt needed help in the kitchen, and I quickly got swept back into hosting duties. That moment faded into the background. Now looking back, I can see all the signs I overlooked. Mark had asked unusually pointed questions about the security system I'd recently installed under the guise of casual conversation during dinner. He also seemed oddly interested in helping tidy up areas near my bedroom and consistently steered our discussions toward finances and investments. At the time, I dismissed these things as annoying quirks rather than the red flags they were. I was too focused on making the gathering run smoothly to consider any hidden motives. The reunion wound down around 9 in the evening. Relatives said their goodbyes in a flurry of warm hugs, leftover containers, and promises to meet again soon. In the end, only Emily and Mark lingered, helping me gather plates and fold up borrowed chairs. "Do you want us to stay and finish up?" Emily asked kindly. I thanked her and reassured them I could handle the rest. Mark, meanwhile, seemed anxious to leave, constantly, glancing at his watch and muttering about an early appointment the next morning. As they were getting ready to go, I remembered I had promised Emily some old photographs I'd recently come across. "Hang on, let me grab those from my room," I said, heading down the hallway. It had become second nature to check on my valuables after hosting anyone, not because I suspected theft, but because it helped ease my mind, especially after everything I'd been through. I opened the closet, pushed aside the stack of winter clothes, and reached for the small safe. The lock turned smoothly, as always. But when I opened the door, a cold wave of dread ran through me. The envelope where I'd stored $5,000 in savings was missing. Panicked, I searched behind the safe, under nearby boxes, inside the closet shelves. Maybe I'd moved it and forgotten? But the longer I looked, the clearer it became. The money wasn't there. Heart pounding, I returned to the living room, where Emily was helping Mark into his coat. "The money is gone," I said quietly, my voice strained. Emily turned toward me, confused. "What money?" "The $5,000 I saved for Sophia's college expenses. It was in my safe and now it's gone." My eyes locked onto Mark. His face shifted from mock surprise to something colder, almost amused. "You can't be serious," he said with a dry chuckle. "You think I took your cash? Come on, Lisa. Maybe you spent it and forgot. You're not exactly known for money management. Isn't that why John left?" Emily looked deeply uncomfortable, caught between me and her husband. "Lisa, maybe you put it somewhere else for safekeeping? Could you have moved it and just forgotten?" I shook my head firmly. I checked last night. It was definitely there. Mark let out a full laugh now, shaking his head. So of course the first thing you do is blame me. Incredible. Lisa, you really need help. He turned to Emily. Let's go. Your sister's having a moment. Emily hesitated, visibly torn. She touched my arm gently. Call me tomorrow, she said quietly before following him out. Once the door shut behind them, I scoured every inch of the house, under the bed, inside drawers, behind bookshelves, even inside the freezer. By midnight, I was sitting on the floor of my bedroom, exhausted and surrounded by chaos. Only two things were certain. The money was gone, and Mark had taken it. I barely slept that night, replaying every detail of the reunion, trying to pinpoint the exact moment he might have accessed the safe. How did he even know the combination? Then it hit me last Christmas, when my parents had given me a jewelry box. I'd casually mentioned that I used the same combination as my safe so I wouldn't forget it. Mark had been right there, listening closely, while everyone else was chatting about the holiday dinner. The morning after the reunion, once Sophia had gone off to school, I called Emily. My hands trembled slightly as I held the phone, but I knew I had to confront this. She picked up on the third ring, her voice cautious. Lisa, is everything all right? I took a breath. No, Em, everything is definitely not okay. I've searched the entire house. That money didn't just disappear. There was a pause on the other end. You're not seriously still thinking Mark took it, are you? Her defensive tone made my stomach drop. Emily, I checked that safe the night before the party. Only family was here yesterday, and Mark was the only one near my bedroom. Her voice sharpened. Do you hear yourself right now? You're accusing my husband based on what? Him walking down the hallway? People go to the bathroom, Lisa. I closed my eyes and tried to stay calm. I understand how it sounds. No, I don't think you do, she interrupted. Mark has a stable job. He earns more than enough. Why would he take your savings? I heard muffled voices in the background. Then Emily said, Mark wants to speak with you. Before I could say no, his voice came through the phone, smooth and patronizing. Lisa, he said with a mocking tone. Look, I get that times are tough for you financially, but blaming other people isn't the solution. I tightened my grip on the phone. This has nothing to do with projecting. I know what I had in that safe. He let out a chuckle, one that made my blood boil. Lisa, we all know things have been hard since John left. Is it possible you misplaced the cash, or maybe it wasn't as much as you thought? Stress can really mess with memory, you know. I didn't forget, I snapped, although a flicker of doubt tried to creep in. Had I moved the money during all the chaos of planning the reunion? Lisa, I'm genuinely concerned about you, Mark continued, fake sympathy dripping from his voice. First the divorce, then your financial struggles. And now you're throwing accusations at people who care about you. Maybe it's time to speak to someone, professionally. That stung. His suggestion that I was unraveling hit hard. I don't need a therapist. Mark, I need the money I saved for my daughter's future. Well, I didn't take it, he said coldly. And Emily and I aren't going to entertain these kinds of wild accusations. Maybe once you've calmed down, you'll realize you've made a mistake. Who knows? The money might show up when you're thinking more clearly. The line went dead. I sat at my kitchen table trying to steady my thoughts. Despite my certainty, doubt was seeping in. Could I have moved it and forgotten? I replayed the moment I last saw the envelope, remembering the exact way the bills were stacked. No, I hadn't imagined it. It was real. It was gone. My thoughts turned to Sophia, how excited she'd been to start visiting colleges. We had planned a road trip to tour 5 campuses, and that money was meant to cover everything: travel, meals, application fees. Now I'd have to cancel, or worse, put the expenses on credit cards I was already struggling to manage. As the initial shock faded, something within me steeled. Mark might have his wealth, his polished image, and my sister's trust, but I had the truth, and I was going to prove it. That afternoon, I decided to be methodical. If he thought he could manipulate me into letting this go, he clearly underestimated me. I started with the home security system. I'd installed a basic setup 6 months ago. Nothing fancy, just a couple of cameras at the front and back doors for peace of mind. But to my frustration, I discovered the system had gone offline between 2 and 6 p.m. on the day of the party, the exact window when most guests were there. That couldn't be a coincidence. Could Mark have known how to disable it? It would have taken planning, technical knowledge too. This didn't feel like a spur-of-the-moment theft anymore. It felt calculated. Next, I made a list of everyone who attended and tried to remember where people had been throughout the day. I began calling them one by one under the pretense of thanking them for coming, gently steering the conversations to whether they'd seen anything unusual. That's when my cousin Rachel mentioned something curious. At one point during the party, I'd gone looking for Mark. I wanted to ask him a quick question about some investment options, but he was nowhere to be found. I searched for nearly 20 minutes before giving up. When I mentioned it to Emily later, she said he was probably in the bathroom. But 20 minutes? That seemed unusually long. Later, during a phone call with my mother, another puzzle piece slipped into place. "You know, Lisa," she said hesitantly, "Mark was asking strange questions before the reunion. He wanted to know if you'd recovered financially after the divorce, and whether you still kept cash in the house, especially after that whole issue with your bank accounts." I assumed he was just being thoughtful. I thanked her and hung up, my unease deepening. That evening, I started going through photos family had shared on social media from the reunion, scrolling through timestamps between 3:30 and 4:15 p.m., the time when everyone was supposed to be gathered around the table. There was no sign of Mark in any of them. It was the peak of the meal, and yet he was missing. In one of the kitchen shots, something else caught my eye. The small ceramic bowl I usually kept by the back corner of the counter, where I stored spare keys, including the one to my bedroom, was out of place. It had been shifted slightly, almost unnoticeably, but I knew that kitchen better than anyone. That bowl didn't move unless someone had touched it. The next morning, I called the one person I was sure would listen without dismissing me, my ex-husband, John. Even though the marriage had ended, we'd stayed on decent terms for Sophia's sake, and he had always been level-headed and sharp in a crisis. "John, the money I set aside for Sophia's college visits, it's gone," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "I really think Mark took it." Unlike everyone else, John didn't second-guess me. "Emily's husband?" he asked, his voice instantly skeptical. "The finance guy who always looks like he's judging the room?" A wave of emotion surged through me. Just hearing someone believe me was enough to bring tears to my eyes. "Yes, that one. What do you need?" he asked without hesitation. "Proof," I said. "I need to show that it was him." John paused for a moment. "You should call your brother, James. He's a cop, right? He'll know the right steps to take." James, my younger brother, worked in law enforcement in a nearby town. He had a good head on his shoulders and a strong sense of justice. If anyone could guide me through this mess the right way, it was him. At first, I hadn't wanted to bring James into this. I was worried it might deepen the already growing tension in the family. But John was right. This had moved beyond just missing money. Someone had intentionally tried to sabotage me, and by doing so had affected Sophia too. When I finally called James and laid out the whole situation, he stayed calm and professional, but I could hear the concern in his voice. "Lisa, I can't launch an official investigation. It's a family matter and outside my jurisdiction. But I can help you gather evidence properly." Over the next few days, with both James and John advising me, I began building a stronger case. One of the first things I noticed was that the spare key to my bedroom, which I usually kept on a hook in the kitchen, had been returned to the wrong one. The change was subtle, easy to miss unless you were paying close attention. Even more suspicious, I found a partial fingerprint on the safe that didn't belong to me or Sophia. But the most revealing clue came when I checked the house phone records. During the time of the reunion, when everyone was supposed to be enjoying the gathering, 3 calls had been made from my landline to an unfamiliar number. When James traced it, we found out it was connected to a locksmith in a nearby town. The puzzle pieces were finally aligning, pointing not to a spontaneous mistake, but to a carefully thought-out plan. Mark hadn't just stumbled into an opportunity. He had orchestrated the entire thing, using the reunion as the perfect cover. Now, the real challenge was figuring out how to confront him in a way that he couldn't manipulate or brush off. James had been clear. What you've got is compelling, but still circumstantial. You need to get him to slip up, to say something that proves his involvement. Right now, it's still a matter of he said, she said. That night I came up with a plan. I wrote a vague but strategic social media post and made sure to tag several relatives, including Emily. Finally got those hidden cameras installed throughout the house after what happened last week. I feel safer knowing everything's being recorded now. Also found a certain envelope with some very telling information. I'll be handing it over to the police tomorrow. Funny how the truth finds a way to surface when you least expect it. Of course, it was all a bluff. There were no hidden cameras, no mysterious envelope. But Mark didn't need to know that. I set my phone down and waited. Not even 15 minutes passed before my phone lit up. Mark's name appeared on the screen. I steadied my breath and tapped the record button on the voice recording app James had helped me install. "Hello," I answered, keeping my tone even. "Lisa, it's Mark," he said quickly. This time his voice was missing that usual smug edge. "I just saw your post. What are you talking about? What evidence?" I kept my voice calm and casual. "Hi, Mark. Oh, that..." "Yeah, I've been doing a bit of digging." "Investigating what exactly?" The nervousness in his voice was unmistakable now. "I think you know, Mark, the missing money." There was a pause. "Lisa, we've been through this. I told you I didn't take your money." I made a non-committal sound. The police seemed very interested in what I found. This was pushing the bluff further, but I needed to see how he'd react. "Police, you went to the police?" His voice rose slightly. "Lisa, making false accusations is a serious matter. I could sue you for defamation. The threat might have intimidated me a week ago, but not anymore. It's not a false accusation if it's true, Mark, and the evidence doesn't lie." "What evidence?" he demanded, his composure slipping further. "What exactly do you think you have?" "I'd rather discuss that with Emily present," I replied calmly. "Or with the police." "Your choice." Another pause. Longer this time. When he spoke again, his tone had changed completely. "Look, Lisa, I think we got off on the wrong foot here. I know things have been tough for you financially. If you're having money problems, Emily and I might be able to help. We could even help you look for the missing money. It has to be somewhere in your house." The sudden offer of help was so transparent I almost laughed. "That's very generous, Mark, but I'm not looking for handouts. I just want what belongs to me returned." "I'm not offering handouts." He backpedaled quickly. "I'm just trying to help family. That's what family does, right?" "Yes, it is," I agreed. "So do the right thing, Mark." I ended the call, my hands shaking. But for an entirely different reason now. Mark was clearly shaken by the bluff. He didn't admit anything directly, but the sudden shift in his attitude and his unexpected offer to help me recover the money spoke volumes. I wasted no time. I called James and played him the recorded call. "He's definitely on edge," James said after listening. "And that offer to help you look for the money? That's highly suspicious. This is progress, Lisa, but we still need more." I nodded instinctively, even though he couldn't see me. "So what now?" "We set up a face-to-face confrontation," James said. "But you won't go through it alone." Despite my intention to keep things limited to James and John, word spread quickly. My mother had overheard part of my phone call with James and, being the natural communicator in the family, took it upon herself to bring people together by calling several relatives to discuss what was going on. Before long, nearly everyone in the extended family had chosen a side. My parents supported me but pleaded for a peaceful approach. "Lisa, sweetheart, we believe you," my dad said gently during a visit 2 days after the recorded call. "We know you wouldn't invent something like this. But is $5,000 really worth tearing apart your relationship with your sister?" I stared at him stunned. "Dad, this isn't about the money anymore. This is about someone I trusted stealing from me and then making me doubt myself. That deserves to be addressed." My mother twisted her hands anxiously. "Emily's expecting, Lisa. She told me just yesterday. Do you really want to add this kind of stress to her pregnancy?" The news hit me hard, like a punch I hadn't seen coming. My sister was pregnant. She was about to have a child with a man I now truly believed had lied to all of us and stolen from me. Suddenly, everything felt even more serious. The consequences weren't just personal anymore, they were generational. Meanwhile, Emily had stopped answering my calls completely. She sent one short message. "I can't believe you're doing this. Mark is heartbroken over your accusations. Lisa, please get some help." That was Emily's message after everything started unfolding. Meanwhile, other family members quickly picked sides, based on their own loyalties and perspectives. My Aunt Carol, who had always sided with Emily, called me up and accused me of being selfish and seeking attention. On the other hand, my cousin Rachel and her husband stood firmly by my side, even offering to lend me money for Sophia's college plans. The split in the family was painful but revealing. It showed me clearly who cared about fairness and who preferred to ignore the truth. The hardest talk came with Sophia. I'd tried to keep her out of the drama, but teenagers have a way of sensing everything. One night, she found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and timelines I'd been piecing together. "Mom, what's going on?" "Grandma called, and she was upset about family issues," Sophia said. I looked at my daughter, 17 now, so mature. With her dad's sharp mind and my own stubbornness, she deserved honesty. "Someone took the money I'd been saving for your college trips, sweetheart." "I'm trying to get it back," I told her. Sophia sat down across from me and said, "It was Uncle Mark, wasn't it?" I never trusted him. Her insight caught me off guard, but I didn't argue. "Why do you say that?" "He's always eyeing our things like he's figuring out how much they're worth. And at the reunion, I saw him coming out of your bedroom. I thought maybe he was just looking for the bathroom. But he looked surprised when he saw me in the hallway." This was new, an eyewitness account I hadn't known about. "Why didn't you say anything before?" "I didn't think it mattered until I overheard you talking to Dad about the missing money." She reached over and held my hand gently. "Mom, I don't care about the college trips. We can take virtual tours. I just don't want you to worry so much." Her kindness made my throat tighten with emotion, but also steeled my determination. "No, Sophia, you deserve to visit those campuses in person. And this isn't just about money anymore. It's about not letting someone take advantage of us and get away with it." She squeezed my hand. "Then I want to help." "What's the plan?" I explained the confrontation James, John, and I were organizing. Sophia listened intently, occasionally offering insights that only someone her age would think of, like checking if Mark had recently purchased anything expensive that might indicate sudden access to cash. A quick social media check revealed Emily posting about a surprise gift from Mark, a designer handbag she'd been wanting that cost nearly $1,000. The timing, just days after the reunion, was another piece of circumstantial evidence. As we finalized our plan for confrontation, Mark escalated his campaign against me. He began telling family members that I was having serious financial problems and had invented the theft story to get sympathy and money from relatives. He hinted that the stress of being a single mom might be affecting my mental health. Most hurtful of all, he persuaded Emily to send me a formal letter accusing me of spreading harmful lies about him, warning of legal consequences if I didn't stop. The letter was clearly Mark's work. Though signed by my sister, it felt like a deeper betrayal than the theft itself. But rather than scare me, it only fueled my resolve. The following day, I called Emily one last time. When she didn't pick up, I left a voicemail. "I'm going to prove that Mark took what's mine. I'm sorry it's come to this, but I won't back down. I love you, and I'll be here whenever you're ready to listen." Then I sent Mark a message. "I'd like to apologize face-to-face. Can you and Emily come by tomorrow at 7? I think it's time we all try to move forward." His response was swift. "Finally seeing sense, we'll be there." Everything was in place. The trap was set. I spent the entire day getting ready for Mark and Emily. James arrived early to help me install recording equipment in the living room. Small, unobtrusive cameras borrowed from the police department's community watch program. John arrived an hour later, his presence a comfort despite our complicated history. "You sure you want to go through with this?" he asked as we arranged the furniture to ensure Mark would sit in full view of the hidden camera. "Absolutely," I replied. "He needs to be exposed for what he is." Sophia had wanted to stay, but I insisted she visit a friend instead. This confrontation could get ugly, and I didn't want her to witness potential family destruction firsthand. At 6:30, James and John hid in Sophia's bedroom, which shared a wall with the living room. They would be able to hear everything through the heating vent, ready to emerge at the right moment. Exactly at 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. I took a steady breath, confirmed the recording devices were on, and opened the door. Emily came in first, her expression a mix of relief and exhaustion. Mark followed, wearing a carefully practiced look of gracious forgiveness. "Lisa," Emily said, giving me a somewhat awkward hug. "I'm really glad you reached out. This whole situation has been so hard." "It has," I agreed, leading them into the living room. "Please have a seat." Mark took the seat we had arranged beforehand, directly facing the hidden camera. I offered them some drinks, which they politely declined, then sat opposite them. "I want to apologize," I began, watching Mark's reaction closely. A faint, smug smile played at the corners of his mouth. "I've been under a lot of stress recently, and maybe I jumped to conclusions," I added. Mark nodded, his face sympathetic. "We understand, Lisa. Financial stress can make people act out of character. Emily and I talked it over, and we want to help you with a loan for Sophia's college." His nerve in offering me my own stolen money as a loan made my blood boil, but I stayed calm. "That's very kind," I replied. "Actually, I have a meeting later with the security company. They're upgrading my system after what happened." For a brief moment, concern flickered across Mark's face. "Oh, what kind of upgrades?" he asked. "Nothing major," I said casually. "Just installing a few more indoor cameras and improving the recording quality of the current ones." I stood up. "Excuse me for a moment. I need to grab something from the kitchen." Once there, I got my purse and placed it prominently on the coffee table when I returned. "Sorry about that. Where were we?" I left the purse slightly open on purpose, letting the edge of an envelope peek out. Mark's eyes kept flicking toward it as our conversation continued. "So this security company," he pressed, "will they be checking the footage from the reunion?" "They might," I answered vaguely. "They mentioned sometimes older recordings can be recovered, even if the system looks offline." That was a complete fabrication, but Mark had no way of knowing. He shifted uneasily in his chair. "Lisa, about that. I've been wondering, could one of the neighborhood kids have gotten in during the party? Your back door was open for a while during the barbecue. Interesting idea," I replied. "But the money was kept in a safe that needs a combination." I excused myself again, this time heading to the bathroom. As I expected, when I returned, my purse had been moved slightly. I sat back down and kept talking for another minute before glancing at my watch. "Oh, the security company should be arriving soon." Mark stood up quickly. "We should probably head out then. Don't want to get in the way." "Before you go," I said, reaching for my purse, "I need to check if I have enough cash to tip the technicians." I opened my wallet and frowned. "That's odd. I had $300 in here earlier today." I looked straight at Mark. "Did you move my purse while I was in the bathroom?" "Mark?" His face reddened. "What?" "No, absolutely not." Emily looked puzzled. "Lisa, what are you implying?" "I'm saying Mark has a habit of taking money that's not his. Just like he took the $5,000 from my safe during the reunion." Mark forced a laugh. "Not this again, Emily. I told you she needs help." "Mark," I said softly, "I know it was you. I have proof." "What proof?" He scoffed. But I caught a flicker of fear in his eyes. "The security system you thought was offline? It wasn't. And the bedroom door you opened with the spare key from my kitchen bowl? That triggered a separate alarm. It was another bluff, but I delivered it so confidently that doubt crept into his expression. "You're making this up," he said, though his voice lacked certainty. "Am I?" I said, standing up and moving toward the hallway. "Would you like to hear what the police have to say about my evidence?" Just then, the door to Sophia's room opened, and James appeared in full police uniform. John came in right behind him. Mark's face went pale. "What is this?" "Some kind of setup." James stepped forward, his tone calm and official. "Mr. Davis, we have grounds to believe you unlawfully accessed Ms. Bennett's safe and took a large sum of money without permission." Emily stood up, looking shocked and pale. "Mark, what's going on?" Mark glanced nervously between us. "This is absurd. You can't prove a thing." "Actually," I said, reaching for my purse, "the I mentioned earlier I marked those bills before you arrived with special UV ink. I nodded at James, who pulled a small UV light from his pocket. Shall we check your pockets, Mark? Or would you prefer to empty them yourself? Mark's composure completely broke. He looked toward Emily, who had stepped back, her hand resting protectively on her stomach, where their unborn child grew. Finally, the reality of what he'd done seemed to sink in. The cost if he kept pretending. It was just sitting there, he said softly, voice barely above a whisper. $5,000 in cash, not even secured properly. Anyone could have taken it. Emily gasped. Mark, you did take it. You promised me you didn't. I was going to pay it back, he insisted, avoiding our eyes. It was just a loan. Lisa doesn't know how to handle money anyway. I plan to invest it and return it with interest. By buying Emily a designer handbag? I asked. Mark's head snapped up. How did you know about that? The same way I knew you took my money. I was paying attention. James stepped closer. Mr. Davis, please empty your pockets now. Defeated, Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out the $300 that belonged to me. Then, slowly, he took out his wallet and handed over several more bills. The rest is at home, he confessed quietly. In my office safe. Emily broke down in tears, her face a mixture of years of sisterly love and the sting of recent betrayal as she looked at me. Lisa, I'm so sorry. I truly didn't know, she whispered. As James recorded Mark's confession and John comforted Emily, I felt no victory, only a deep sadness mixed with relief. The door that had opened that day revealed painful truths, but also the inner strength I'd rediscovered by standing up for myself, something I'd lost sight of during the tough years after my divorce. Mark's confident smirk had vanished, replaced by the hollow look of a man who had risked everything assuming I wouldn't fight back. He was wrong. The weeks after the confrontation were among the hardest, but also the most healing of my life. The following day, Mark returned the rest of the money. Not only the $5,000, but an additional $2,000, which he called interest. Though we all knew it was just an attempt to avoid legal trouble. After lengthy talks with James, John, and even Sophia, I chose not to pursue criminal charges, mainly for Emily's sake. My sister was heartbroken, torn between the husband she thought she knew and the reality of his betrayal. She temporarily left the house they shared and came to stay with me, despite the tension between us. One evening, as we sat together on my porch swing, the same spot where we once shared secrets and dreams as kids, she said softly, I should have trusted you, I admitted. I kept making excuses for his actions because I was afraid to face what it meant about my own decisions. Taking her hand gently, I said, We've all been there. Emily, I stayed with John far longer than I should have because I couldn't accept that our marriage was truly over. She rested her head on my shoulder, her hand lightly resting on her growing belly. What am I supposed to do, Lisa? I'm expecting a child with someone I no longer trust. That question sparked many heartfelt conversations in the months that followed. Eventually, Emily decided to file for divorce, an agonizing choice made even harder by her pregnancy. But witnessing my strong and determined sister regain control of her life and set clear boundaries was truly inspiring. Meanwhile, Mark, confronted with losing both his marriage and his standing in the family, began attending therapy. Whether it was sincere regret or a calculated effort to repair his image, I couldn't be sure. Regardless, it was a positive step forward. Regarding the money, the original, $5,000 plus the interest, Mark claimed Sophia and I used it just as planned. That late spring, we set off on our college road trip, visiting 5 campuses in 3 different states. Seeing my daughter's face light up when she discovered her perfect fit, a medium-sized university with a strong graphic design program and a partial scholarship, made all the extra hours. I worked to save that money completely worthwhile. I want to study business too, Mom, she said on the drive home after our last campus visit. I never want to be in a place financially where I'm vulnerable like we were after you and Dad separated. Her words struck me deeply. I hadn't realized how much my financial struggles had impacted her. I told her, Sophia, I'm sorry if I ever put too much of that weight on your shoulders. She shook her head. No, you didn't. You showed me how to be strong. But watching Uncle Mark taught me that money can give people control, and I want to make sure I always have the power to choose my own path. My thoughtful, insightful daughter had gleaned lessons from our family's painful chapter that I hadn't fully understood myself. While that episode altered my relationships in lasting ways, not all the changes were negative. Emily and I became closer than we'd been since childhood, supporting each other through her divorce and the birth of my nephew, Lucas. My parents, initially focused on maintaining family harmony at all costs, came to understand that sometimes confrontation is necessary to protect what matters. John and I developed a friendship beyond co-heiring, built on the respect that grew when he supported me without question. James and I started a monthly sibling dinner tradition that expanded to include cousins and eventually even Emily again. As for my own growth, the woman who confronted Mark was a different person than the one who had hosted that family reunion. I'd rediscovered my voice, my boundaries, and my inherent worth. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. That looking weak to those who would take advantage of you doesn't make you a better person, it makes you a target. And perhaps most importantly, I learned that family isn't defined by blood or marriage certificates, but by who stands beside you when you're fighting for what's right. Today, almost 2 years later, Sophia is thriving in her freshman year at college. Emily is starting fresh as a single mom, with Lucas now a cheerful, babbling 1-year-old who has inherited my father's eyes and Emily's determination. Mark's visits are limited and supervised, and while our conversations only concern Lucas, he now approaches me with a cautious respect, quite different from the smug looks he used to give me. As for me, I've grown my freelance design work into a small but thriving business, recently bringing on my first employee. The financial stability I've achieved feels like a personal triumph, proof that Mark underestimated me. Looking back to the moment the door opened and Mark's arrogant confidence shattered, I'm filled with mixed feelings. Pride, certainly, but also gratitude for the resilience I discovered and the genuine family that formed from the ruins of pretenses. The money didn't just vanish and reappear. It became a turning point, revealing who truly stood by me when it mattered most. And ultimately, that truth is worth far more than any sum could be. Have you ever had to stand your ground against someone who doubted you? How did you deal with it? Share your experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Sometimes the toughest challenges come from those who cause us to question ourselves. But what I've discovered is that trusting your gut and surrounding yourself with genuine allies can change everything. If this story spoke to you, consider subscribing for more honest stories and valuable lessons gained through experience. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, you're more resilient than you realize, especially when faced with people who doubt your strength.